In this, the part 2 about cameras, I'm going to compare and contrast the different sorts of cameras. So we'll add some more information to our spreadsheet of definitions. So a DSLR reflects light from a mirror to the viewfinder. The mirror moves as soon as you press the button to take an image. It's the click. In contrast, the mirrorless camera has no mirror, and so when you take the image, there's no mechanical wobble of the mirror being moved. This isn't a problem for deep space work because you're taking an image over a minute, 2 minutes, up to 5 minutes, so a little wobble isn't going to cause a problem. But when you're taking images of the moon and planets, these are many images per second. Most DSLRs come with an infrared filter. It's there so that when you take the family snap, it's not washed out in red. But in astrophotography, we would prefer to have that infrared light captured. So you can modify the camera yourself or send it off to a specialist to be modified. And as I mentioned in the previous video, the sensor size is either full frame or a cropped version of that, and this is typically the APS Classic. And I can see there I've got the size wrong way around. It's 36 by 24 for a full frame, and a Classic is somewhere around 22 by 15. It's very important that when you're buying a camera that you make sure it's suitable for the OTA or camera lens that you'll be using. OSC is simply one-shot colour as opposed to a monochrome camera. And as we looked at in the previous video, if you use a monochrome camera, you'll get 4 times the resolution, but you'll take subframes using luminous red, green and blue filters, or the narrowband filters. So to compare and contrast a DSLR mirrorless camera with the dedicated astronomy camera, DSLRs, you can get them relatively cheap second-hand. You can use it with various photographic lenses, which again are reasonably priced. It's multi-purpose, so you can still take the family snaps, and it comes with a built-in battery, storage like a memory card and a screen, so you don't need a computer to operate it. So in contrast, an Astro camera, it's designed specifically to fit OTAs and form a telescope. It doesn't require any sort of modification to connect to a telescope. It's got no mechanical parts unless it's got a cooling fan. It's designed for long exposures, especially if it's got the cooling system. And generally, and it is generally, it could be lighter in weight and so a lot easier to balance your telescope on a tripod. So a cooled camera has an inbuilt cooling system including a fan. It takes the electronics temperature way down below 0 degrees centigrade, and as such for long exposures it will significantly reduce the amount of noise. But in contrast to that, an uncooled camera will be less expensive and significantly lighter if weight is becoming a problem for the whole train of your telescope. So your OTA is round, but your camera sensor is square, which means there's a gap between the two. This gap can be used by a smaller camera to provide guiding for your telescope mount. And we'll talk more about that when we look at smart telescopes. But of course you've already got a camera, it's in your back pocket, it's your smartphone, and you can buy a simple adapter to hold it up to the eyepiece of your telescope and you're into astrophotography. To research your camera options in more depth, I would suggest looking at the Sky at Night magazine, where they do a review of the current cameras for the year. I'll put a link over in the description. So that leads on to our next challenge. It's choosing between naked eye astronomy or astrophotography. And if you're going for astrophotography, then you're going to have to choose a camera. However, you may want to go for naked eye astronomy to begin with and move on to astrophotography later, in which case you need to be careful when choosing your mount and optical tube assembly that it's going to be suitable to upgrade for astrophotography at a later date. In the next video we'll be looking at smart telescopes.